So where there was a kind of knot and a pull in and a hunker down and a trauma, now there's space and harmony and openness and breath. And so I don't know, I was probably like 10 minutes in that spot. After a little while, the body started calling. It's almost like, you call out to the body, the fork is like, blah, and the body's like, blah. And then after a little while, the fork's still going, blah. And then after a little while, the body's like, blah, back. And then the tension and the discomfort and all that subconscious stuff that was held there releases, right? So his experience the next day was he could not believe how relaxed he was, how that he'd had this kind of deep down tense anxiety and it had just let go and opened up and he had more flexibility in his body. And, so that's kind of a typical outcome is just biofield tuning is this process of finding these tangles and snarls in the electrical system that are memories of difficult inputs and then supporting the body and untying and releasing and letting go of the freeze so that that energy goes back into circulation. Becomes available to us again.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey, Hilda here. Many of us have energy traffic jams in the body, places where we're stuck in some way, physically or emotionally. This is episode 349, and our guest today is Eileen Day McKusick. Eileen is a researcher who has been studying how sound impacts health for decades. She is the author of Electric Body, Electric Health, and the originator of the Biofield tuning therapy. Today, Eileen explains how humans are electrical, energetic beings, and how our biofields can have areas of distortion or resistance because of memories or past traumas. She describes how we can retune our bodies to get back into harmony with ourselves, so to speak. And she covers how tuning forks can be used to positive effect, but also how we can unleash healing through breath work, connection with nature, laughter, and even singing. Before we get into the conversation, I want to invite you to become a member of the Weston A. Price Foundation. WAPF is a member-supported group. In other words, we can only do education, research, and activism with your help. There's no other way. This podcast, for example, is a project of the foundation, and it is riding on your support. If you appreciate this work and many of the foundation's projects, join us. Become a member of the foundation. It's only $30 for the year if you use the code POD10 when you join. So do it today. Go to westonaprice.org and click on the Become a Member button on the homepage of the website. Thank you in advance and welcome to the family. And a quick shout out to Redmond Real Salt. Redmond Real Salt comes from an ancient underground salt deposit, which makes it a kind of ancient sea salt. And this ancient sea salt has a lot of advantages over its more modern counterparts. First off, it's protected from modern pollutants like microplastics by layers of volcanic ash and clay. It's also filled with over 60 healthy trace minerals that are naturally found in this one-of-a-kind salt deposit. These minerals give Redmond Real Salt unique health benefits and a delicious, subtly sweet taste. Basically, Redmond Real Salt is just the way nature made it long ago. It doesn't have popular modern-day additives like dextrose or anti-caking agents or iodine. It's naturally yummy the way salt was meant to be savored. So go to redmond.life and check them out. That's redmond.life, redmond.life, and use the code word WISE for 15% off at checkout. Again, that's redmond.life and the code word WISE. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Eileen.
Thanks, Hilda. Great to be here.
When I first met you, it was at the Advanced Medicine Conference in South Dakota, and I was blown away by the concept that a tuning fork could be used to get us unstuck energetically. I know that sounds wild, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was really surprised to discover that myself. So
Well, let's kick things off with the story of a client you were working with and how you found, just again, through using this tuning energetic field, that he had some issue in his past that was keeping him stuck.
First of all, we all have issues in our past that keep us stuck. And I think as somebody who's been in practice for 25 years as a body worker and a sound therapist, I will say that the biggest reason why people go and look for help, whether it's chiropractic or a doctor or what have you, is because they're stuck in some way, in some kind of physical pain, emotional turmoil, mental bad habits, things like that, or just in their life. And the practice that I developed, Biofield tuning, is a way of scanning through the body's biofield or body's electrical system in its entirety, something most of us don't learn about. And using the tuning fork like sonar, basically what I'm doing is I'm sounding this environment, this sort of invisible environment around us that's hidden in plain view. And I'm looking for areas within the system where there is distortion or resistance. And the tuning fork, so interestingly, acts almost like an invisible ink decoder. And as the sound waves bounce off of this invisible territory, they come back with information, just like an ultrasound or how dolphins or bats navigate and echolocate. I've been able to discover that there's a whole anatomy and physiology in the magnetic field that surrounds our body. And I also discovered that it's where our memories are stored. And over the course of a number of years, I figured out that very specific memories are located in very specific areas of the field. Now, we've been indoctrinated into thinking that our memories are in our brain. Well, they might be in our brain, but they're also in the toroidal electrical system that flows through and around our bodies, right? So in science, anything that has an electrical current running through it has a magnetic field around it. And our human bodies are no different. We run on electricity. We have a magnetic field around us. And if you think about it, Hilda, everything that we experience, everything that we see and smell and touch and taste and speak and feel is all translated in the body as electrical signaling. So it would make sense that our memories are stored in our body's electrical system. And I found that they appear to be stored in standing waves, like magnetically encoded waveforms in the magnetic field that surrounds our body. So with this particular client, I had him on the table. Biofield tuning clients lie down on a treatment table fully clothed. And I start about 6 feet away and I start to slowly comb in towards the body with a vibrating tuning fork. And I'm very quiet inside. I'm listening very deeply. And I'm also exquisitely attuned to my fingertips and the amount of resistance and noise that fork is encountering. And on this particular guy, I hit this place in the field and the fork made a sound. It was the most horrible sound. It was so atonal. It was so dissonant and so distorted. And he could hear it. He was like, wow. He was like, what is that? And I said, well, let me track it. Let me plot it on the map, because I've observed that our fields extend about 6 feet around us, and information I find in the outer boundary of the field. So unlike auras or human energy fields, which are really the same phenomenon that we're describing with the term biofield, but when we see images of those or think of them, we tend to think that it just becomes sort of finer and more diffuse and kind of fades away. That has not been my observation. My observation is that there's an actual boundary and that the field is sort of like a bubble, and that boundary aspect contains the memories of our gestation. Just inside that is our birth. And then if I'm working on somebody who's 60, I'm going to find information that was generated in their electrical system, all their feelings and thoughts and experiences, about 3 feet away from their body. So it's like dropping a needle on an album and reading a vibrational record of somebody's life. And as I get close to the body, I'm getting into the stuff that was generated recently, right? Kind of like how hair grows away from us. So the vibrations that our body creates sort of get laid down in these standing waves, sort of moving away from us.
I'm envisioning, Eileen, the rings on a tree, a little bit like that, right?
Yes. And I used to use that as an analogy, but I read recently that trees don't grow the way that we think that they do. They actually grow from the bark out and not from the heart out, like people were saying.
Oh, interesting.
Ever
Yes.
since I read that, I stopped using it as an analogy. And I mean, I have, it's in my book as an analogy, but hair, I know, like starts here and then grows away.
Oh.
I'm solid on that analogy. There's always new information coming to light, right? It's always so important to kind of take our previous assumptions and be willing to reconsider them in the light of new information. And certainly, this whole new bioelectric model of health is like you have to really reframe it. Most people don't even know we have an electrical system. So you got to break down old understandings and build up new ones.
Absolutely.
So I was able to, with this person in this spot that I hit, I was able to plot it on, here's the edge of your field, here's your body, here's how old you are. I said, this happened when you were around 18. And he said, oh, that's when I went through the windshield of a car.
Ah,
Which, when you think about it, that is an incredibly disruptive experience to your organism, right? And the impact of going through the aftermath, the pain, the fallout, all of that is going to create huge disruption in your experience and then in your record, but then in your body as well. Right. So I was able to the fork to go back into the memory of that experience and the trauma and the freeze that was held in the body's electrical system as a consequence of that. And so what's really neat about the tuning forks is that the human body is actually a self-tuning instrument. The body is designed to be in tune. It wants to be harmonious. Those are what I call our factory settings. And so when you find an area in the body's electrical system that has distortion in it, and you just stick a fork in there and you keep activating the fork and basically reflecting to the body, be like, hey, body, listen to the mess that's over here. The organizing intelligence will use that, both the reflection and the steady, coherent input of the tuning fork to actually tune itself and bring its expression into greater harmony. And that pretty much almost always involves the body relaxing, deeply subconsciously held tension and freeze, and breath opening and expanding. So where there was a kind of knot and a pull in and a hunker down and a trauma, now there's space and harmony and openness and breath. And so I don't know, I was probably like 10 minutes in that spot. After a little while, the body started calling. It's almost like, you call out to the body, the fork is like, blah, and the body's like, blah. And then after a little while, the fork's still going, blah. And then after a little while, the body's like, blah, back. And then the tension and the discomfort and all that subconscious stuff that was held there releases. Right. So his experience the next day was he could not believe how relaxed he was, that he'd had this kind of deep down tense anxiety and it had just let go and opened up, and he had more flexibility in his body. And, so that's kind of a typical outcome. It's just biofield tuning is this process of finding these tangles and snarls in the electrical system that are memories of difficult inputs, and then supporting the body and untying and releasing and letting go of the freeze so that that energy goes back into circulation and becomes available to us again.
oh my gosh. It's so beautiful. And as you were saying about being open to new information, I think you're exactly right. Most of us think of trauma as sitting in our, let's say, our hearts or our brains, but we don't think of it affecting some kind of energy field around us. So what you're describing makes sense to me, and I hope to the listener as well. So I wanted to ask you what you were describing about using the tuning fork. Is this the biofield therapy that you're advocating? And what does it entail exactly? Like how many sessions and what kind of tuning fork? Is it the kind you could buy at a music store, that kind of thing?
Biofield tuning is a sound therapy method that I began developing all the way back in 1996 when I had a part-time massage therapy practice, and I introduced a set of tuning forks for healing into it as a kind of experiment. And the forks that I was using were the C major scale, just like what you would use to tune an instrument, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And right from the very beginning, I was surprised and amazed and astonished by the whole experience of using tuning forks. They didn't sound like I thought that they would. They produced incredible therapeutic outcomes very quickly, which really surprised me. they were just really curious, and they really led me on a journey of exploration and discovery. I did the work as a hobby, as a kind of couple times a week sort of hobby for 10 years,
Wow.
10 years, and then made a discovery that really changed everything. And that was prior to this discovery, I was just holding the forks right over the body, kind of scanning for atonal areas, staying in atonal areas till they harmonized.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually, in 2005, discovered information and energy and stuff going on around the body. And when I started kind of exploring the atmosphere around the body and working with the phenomena that I found there, the noise and resistance that I was finding there, my therapeutic outcomes became super, super dramatic. And I decided that I sort of had a moral obligation to bring this form of healing out into the world. But Hilda, tuning forks for healing, especially like back in the 90s in Connecticut, it just sounds really airy-fairy and woo-woo and pseudoscientific and all of that. I didn't feel comfortable when I would tell skeptics. They were really mean about it, quite honestly. And so I decided I need to go to college and get some degrees. And then I figured, well, if I apply science to this equation, it will make me more credible. And so I ended up going to college as an adult and writing a master's thesis called Exploring the Effects of Audible Sound on the Human Body and its Biofield. And I discovered the term biofield, and I started to understand the body's electrical system, and I started to understand the science of resonance and entrainment and the physics of what was going on. That thesis became the basis for my first book, Tuning the Human Biofield. And then I started, because I had a master's in education at this point, I started training my first students back in 2010. And then receiving the work myself, which was pretty amazing because I've been doing it for years, but never receiving it. To answer your question, like, how many does it take? Or it's an interesting thing. Like, I can have somebody come to me who's in a lot of pain, resolve that pain in one session, and have it never come back. Like, that definitely can happen. I can have people who have depression or anxiety have 3 sessions and feel a lot better. But here's the thing with healing is that you don't ever go get your oil changed once and then think that the oil is going to be good forever, right? Mm-hmm. As long as you have a vehicle requires maintenance. If vehicles are under stress or in accidents or run out of some kind of fluid, they need extra maintenance. And our bodies are the same way. Like, self-care and health is really a lifestyle. And in order to stay healthy in this world, we need to have a lifestyle that supports our health. So, for example, I receive regular tuning. I've had hundreds and hundreds of sessions. Do I still yell at my kids once in a while? Yeah. This isn't like promising to like bring you up to 1,000 on the scale of enlightenment and make you never get angry again and achieve Buddhahood. You know what I mean? Like, I've discovered that we're human beings and we really need to have permission to be human beings. But this work makes us more resilient. It makes us healthier. It makes us stronger. And whether people choose to do it in just like a set of 3 to get over a particular hump, or start doing it as a lifestyle. I get regular massage. I get regular biometric integration chiropractic, and I get regular tuning. And because of that, I stay really vital and really healthy.
Coming up, Eileen tells us how we can harmonize our bodies without the use of a tuning fork.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Force of Nature. Our family is seriously obsessed with the meats from Force of Nature. They are a meat company based in Austin, Texas, that offers regenerative, 100% grass-fed, pasture-raised, and wild-caught meats. They've got beef and chicken, along with wild game like venison, elk, and boar. And they offer ancestral blends, too, that contain 7% organ meat. These are my favorites. We have made some bison ancestral blend tacos recently, and they were simply excelente, super sabrosos. In other words, tasty, excellent, and deeply nourishing. We couldn't get enough, honestly. And Force of Nature also has recently launched 3 different flavors of breakfast sausage: venison beef, a bison beef blend, and wild boar chorizo. These are also game-changing breakfast meats. What I love about Force of Nature, besides the fact that their meat is nutrient-dense and responsibly sourced and tasty, is the fact that they are also committed to regenerative agriculture and helping educate and empower consumers to change the food system for the better. They manage the land in such a way that it improves and embraces biodiversity, both above and below the ground, in a way that honors and mimics the way Mother Nature does it. And I've also personally met members of their team at a recent Wise Traditions conference, and I can vouch for their heart and integrity. Their passion and commitment to improving our health and the environment through better meat is at the core of the brand. I am so glad I found Force of Nature. So check them out. Just go to forceofnature.com and they'll ship your order directly to your door in a few days. And as a perk for being a Wise Traditions podcast listener, they offer 15% off your first purchase when you enter the code WISE15 at checkout. Be sure to use all caps to apply the discount. That's WISE15, the number 15, for 15% off your entire order at forceofnature.com. And a shout out to Optimal Carnivore. Organ meats are some of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet, and the founders of Optimal Carnivore understood the amazing benefits of eating organ meats. But they found it difficult to source a variety of high-quality organ meat, and they disliked the process of preparing them and trying to make them tasty. So they started sourcing 100% grass-fed organ meat from New Zealand, freeze-drying the organs, and encapsulating them into convenient bovine gelatin capsules. They chose New Zealand because it is a pure source. They freeze-dry the organs to preserve all of the vitamins, minerals, proteins, and enzymes. And knowing that our ancestors would have eaten the whole animal, they've created a unique blend of 9 different organs in their grass-fed organ complex. It's a powerful combination, including beef liver, brain, thymus, heart, kidney, spleen, pancreas, lung, and gallbladder. It's a real nose-to-tail solution, since each organ contains its own unique benefits and nutritional profile, and it provides a large range of nutrients that support all of the major organs and glands. The guys at Optimal Carnivore believe everyone deserves easy access to these, the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet, and they want to take the guesswork and hassle out of eating organ meat. Plus, all of their products are 100% grass-fed and grass-finished and free of hormones, pesticides, antibiotics, and GMOs. These babies will cover your bases whether you're at home or traveling. Plus, Optimal Carnivore plants 1 tree for every product sold, which helps the environment. So go now to amazon.com/optimalcarnivore and order the grass-fed organ complex, which I've already mentioned, or the grass-fed bone marrow, or their grass-fed liver products, or all 3. And use the code Weston10 to save 10% at checkout. Again, that's amazon.com/optimalcarnivore and use the code Weston10 to save 10% on all their products. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. So, Eileen, are there ways in which we can harmonize or tune ourselves without using a tuning fork or your particular method?
Oh gosh, yes, there's so many. I mean, ultimately, here's the thing, and this is what I've learned from the tuning forks. Nothing is more powerful than our own minds. It's our minds that make us sick. It's our minds that make us well. Beyond that, all of the codes for health and healing are present in nature. All we need to do is go outside and earnestly ask a beech tree in the sun and the grass to heal us. And if we're open enough and receptive enough, it can. But tuning forks come in super handy. They're a useful tool. Any kind of sound healing thing, like a bowl or a bell or a gong or a chime, will bring us into that aware present moment, right? Where we're embodied and fully present and our mind isn't spinning. We can do it with our own voice, with toning, with chanting, with singing our favorite songs, just being outside, listening to the waves, listening to the birds, just even steadying our breath and being really present with our own inhale and audible exhale can help just bring us into this moment. And most of what makes people sick is being in the past or in the future.
Yes.
And being uncomfortable in the past or the future and not being present in this moment.
Let's just pause for a minute and let that sink in, that one thing that makes us sick is either living in regrets of the past or living in a time outside of the now, looking ahead and getting concerned about the future. What if we just were here right this second? Now, I want to ask you, Eileen, about the therapeutic outcomes. You said you've seen so many. Can you tell us another story or two of things that you've seen change in the client's health?
I want to tell one story about teaching, because I used to teach my method all myself, and then I brought in teachers, and now I actually don't even teach in my own certification program anymore. I have a whole team of teachers that does that. But in my early years of teaching, I taught levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. And people were certified after level 3. And so I got to watch people come in, in the beginning, and then start practicing, becoming a practitioner and receiving sessions. And every single one of my level 4 classes was just a hoot, because everybody had lightened up. Everyone was more comfortable in their skin. They were more playful. They were cracking jokes, so we just spend hours just kind of in a haze of giggling, because everybody had become more free and more playful. So that is what happens. That is what I see happen with everyone, is that as we relieve you of your baggage, your undigested emotional experiences, traumas, the traumas of your ancestors, the guilt, the shame, the false beliefs, the stories that you're carrying around, the distortions in your field, as all of that starts to be digested and integrated and turned from heavy lead that you're carrying around with you into light energy that's flowing through you, you become more of you, more authentically you. So you become more creative, you become more spontaneous, you become more patient. The creativity is a big one. And that's something that I've often seen, where I remember working on this woman once, and I was working on her throat center. And as I'm completing the adjustment, I said to her, "Are you a writer?" And she said, "No." And then I'm listening some more. I was like, "Are you sure you're not a writer?" And she's just like, "No." It was really funny the way that she responded. Okay, so fast forward 2 years later, and she comes to see me again. And she said, "Do you remember when I was here last time you asked me if I was a writer?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I actually had a whole series of children's books that I'd been wanting to write but hadn't. And after that adjustment, they all came through. The first in the series has just been published."
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Yeah. So things like that, unlocking people's creativity, getting people unstuck, right? Never mind getting over the pain and all of the emotional baggage. But once that is liberated, then we become much more productive. I have another great story of this woman. She wasn't a client of mine, but one of my practitioners. And I met her at a networking event. She came up to me and she said, "Eileen, I just have to tell you that your work completely changed my life." She said, "I had all of, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, all of this stuff. And I was eating clean and I was doing all the right things and I had no energy and my life was not working at all. And I started doing biofield tuning, and I realized that it wasn't what I was eating. It was all of my emotional mismanagement and emotional stuffing that I'd been doing my whole life, because I'd been trying to be good and nice and perfect. And I had taken my anger and my rage and all of my icky stuff, and I'd stuffed it away, and I was carrying it around in my field, and it was exhausting." And she said, "Now that I've been liberated from this, my whole coaching business," she works with young women and empowers young women. In fact, she just got named one of the top 50 coaches in the world for the work that she's doing with young women. And she never would have been able to realize her potential drinking celery juice all week if she hadn't gotten biofield tuning as well.
Now, do you see also physical therapeutic outcomes?
Absolutely. I mean, pain is one of the things that this really treats best. And what's kind of interesting is that it works on psychosomatic pain. And I'll just give you an example. I worked on a woman not years ago, but it's always a good story to tell. It was a 20-minute chair session freebie at a spa. And she said that she had all this pain in her left shoulder, and she'd gotten an MRI and she'd gotten this and that. And they couldn't find anything wrong with it, but it hurt so much. And so I have my tuning fork and I'm scanning the magnetic field around it. And I discovered that there's a whole big cloud of like heavy energy hanging off of her left shoulder. And I said to her, "Have you lost anybody in the last year or two that was close to you?" And she said, "Yes, my husband died 18 months ago and I'm still so sad." And I was like, well, that's what your problem is that you're generating all of this sad energy. And that's where sad energy goes to live, off the left shoulder. And so it's just weighing you down because the emotional energy actually has mass. And so with the tuning fork, I'm able to actually move that. A tuning fork produces a weak electromagnetic charge, and it becomes sort of like a magnetic stylus. And I can pick up the iron filings of that emotional debris in the field and move it from the shoulder into the midline of the electrical system, into the central channel of the torus, where it goes into circulation. It's just a pileup, like a traffic jam.
I'm picturing that little children's toy with the with the little stylus and the magnetic shavings that you can kind of move to make the man's face get a beard or give him more hair or whatever. It's like you can move stuff around, but stuff that's not visible to the naked eye.
Yeah. I used to use that toy as a teaching prop because it's a great image. It's just that it's invisible, but it's there and it has mass. And you can feel it and hear it and sense it with the tuning fork. And so after I, shifted that burden, she felt so much better. She was so astonished. She got up and she was waving her arm around, and then she went and sat with her girlfriends, and she kept looking over at me in astonishment as I'm continuing to work with people, right? So that's a perfect example of psychosomatic pain. It was emotional pain, and there was nothing a doctor could do for her, right? But there was something a tuning fork therapist could do for her.
But Eileen, what would you say to the skeptic who sees the human being as more of a machine, maybe even with a lot of cause and effect at play? In other words, I play too much tennis, so I've got tennis elbow, or my knee hurts just because I'm getting older.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's truly, purely mechanical issues, but in my observation, remember, I've worked with thousands of people over decades, right? So you see patterns. And I find that people always tend to get injured in places where their field is out of balance. And their field is out of balance because of difficult memories or earlier injuries or bad mental habits. And so I've just seen that consistently. Like I have a girlfriend who, single mom, owns her own massage school, teaches at a few different colleges, always taking care of everybody and everything. Now, I've observed that people tend to get injuries in their right shoulders when they have a habit of saying yes when they mean no, when they put other people's needs ahead of their own. So she was out on a hike a few years ago and she fell. And she called me afterwards and she said, Eileen, I just fell while I was hiking, and guess where I injured myself? And I said, your right shoulder. And she said, you're absolutely right. Because she was energetically out of balance in that zone. That the electricity that should have been nourishing and supporting the physiology had shifted to an out of balance place off the right shoulder, just like the sadness had shifted and piled up off the left shoulder. Right? So people who have right hip issues, for example, almost always are overthinking and overdoing consistently. They're taking their body's electrical system energy, shifting it off to the right side in an out of balanced expression, which then the physiology isn't supported with sufficient juice and starts to go south.
Help us understand this whole we're electrical, energetic beings thing. Like, I feel like I've heard this so many times, and I've even read books about it, the body electric and this and that, but I still don't quite get what is meant by the term we are electrical beings.
Sure. Well, so, if you get an EKG and it's reading the electrical activity of your heart, right? That boom, 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 boom. Okay, that pulse is created by an electrical impulse. So if that electricity was not present in the body to create that impulse, you would flatline. Right? So not only is the movement of the heart generated by that electrical impulse, the movement, the activity in our brains is electric, right? We all know that we have different brain wave states and that this is all electricity. It's all circuitry. So not only is our heart and our brain, but also every cell membrane has to have a certain amount of electric current running across it in order for it to function. Just like my laptop won't work unless it's got juice, my cell membranes, my heart, my brain, my physical body will not run without electric juice.
Yes. I read recently that Jack Kruse says the only difference between a dead body and a live body is that electrical charge.
That's exactly it. Because here's the thing, when you're alive, your light is on, right? You are moving, you are conscious, you can see the light in my eyes, right? When you die, your light goes out. The body's still there. It's no longer animated. It is not pulsing. There is no juice moving through it. The juice is gone. Right. And I ask this when I'm in front of big groups. I'm like, who's ever been present with somebody or something that's died and actually seen the light go up and out of them? And about half the people raise their hands. I watch, my husband and I both watch the light body, the electrical system of our 220-pound English Mastiff rise up out of his body when he was put to sleep. That's the electrical system. And I would say that it's the same thing as what we call your soul.
Well, speaking of soul, Eileen, I've been reading about saints of old, and there is a saint, I think it's a Teresa de Avila, who was able to levitate. And some people say the reason some people can levitate is because of the magnetic charge in their body, that it's different and suddenly gravity can't hold them down. What do you think of that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a known phenomenon that when something becomes sufficiently charged, it can levitate. So, yeah. And what is electricity? What is that? But what we would call God, right? Or the life force or light. So by feeding your light body, and this is the tenet, the premise of electric health, is that I don't take any supplements, Hilda. I'm 53 years old. I have huge amounts of energy. I have magnificent digestion. Now, it didn't used to be this way. I used to be fat, broken, sick like most other people, right? And then I discovered the body's electrical system and started working to take care of my electrical system, juicing it up, making sure it doesn't have any resistance or noise in it. Now, my electrical system and many people out there who've received Biofield tuning is functioning great. And then because it's the blueprint to the physiology, my physiology is great. No aches, no pains, no nothing, because my electrical system is in order. So it's a whole new model. It's going below the level of the chemical and mechanical into the electrical circuitry, wiring and blueprint, the essence of our aliveness, and getting that sorted out.
Well, this is so magnificent. But I want to ask you now as we wrap up, Eileen, what is the one thing that the listener can do to improve their health?
Sing, laugh, not take yourself so seriously. You know, my husband and I crack each other up all the time, and I'm so grateful for that. Laughter is the best medicine. And I think that what's going on in the world right now is causing people to lose their sense of humor. And I think that that's a terrible thing. I think that the simple things that are free, you know, breathing deeply, being appreciative and grateful, loving ourselves, loving life, loving this cup of coffee that you made just perfectly this morning, watching silly cat videos. I mean, really, there's no end of things that we can do that are free to help us to feel better, as long as we feel worthy. You know, you got to feel worthy. I'm worthy of one good belly laugh a day, at least, right? And so the importance of not getting too heavy, not getting too serious, not letting things steal your sense of humor. It's trite, but live, love, laugh. I mean, it's pretty much a prescription. You know, there's so much more I can say, right? There's never been more tools in the world to help us to feel better. But, you know, let's not also forget the importance of having a good cry, you know, really letting ourselves cry, letting ourselves be real about how we feel instead of trying to fix it. And just being able to be with discomfort, knowing that we'll get through it, you know, instead of trying to fix everything all the time. It's okay to be human. It's okay to feel all kinds of emotions. And laughter is really your best remedy.
I love it. Thank you so much, Eileen. This has been a pleasure. And you've definitely brought a smile to my lips. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Hilda. Great to talk with you.
Our guest today is Eileen McKusick. Go to her website, electrichealth.com, for more videos, products, and information, along with resources. And I'm Hilda Labrador, the host and producer of this podcast for the Weston A. Price Foundation. You can find me at holistichilda.com. And for the transcript for this episode, visit our website, westonaprice.org, and click on the podcast page. And now for a recent review from Apple Podcasts. Lively's mom says this: "This is by far my favorite podcast. They have great information on how to maintain a healthy life, from EMFs, the importance of the sun, herbs, eating organ meats, healing from trauma, and yes, vaccine safety. The bad reviews are obviously from people who don't live a true natural life the way our ancestors lived. They must watch the TV or news. I love the Nourishing Traditions book of Baby and Childcare by Sally Fallon Morell. And keep it up, people. We love listening to you. Keep spreading love and healthy information. Oh, Lively's mom, this really means a lot. I am serious, you guys. We put a lot into the show and into all of the projects of the Weston A. Price Foundation. So when you leave us a review, it makes us feel good. Plus, it's a great way to get the word out about the show. So thank you. You too can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Just go to the site, click on ratings and reviews, leave us as many stars as you'd like, and tell us what you think about the show. And thank you in advance. I appreciate your listening. Stay well, my friend. Hasta pronto.
On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.